Hello! Happy Monday. Happy pajama day. You can see I came all bundled up. I have my cup of coffee. I have a great book. I'm really excited to share the next part with you. And the best news is that we are nearing the end of the book. There are 2 chapters left, and they're pretty short, so I think we'll read both today. Sound good? Chapter 11, The Magician. Hugo finished putting on his tuxedo. He rubbed the buttons and admired how smooth and shiny they were. Catching his reflection in the mirror, he stared for a moment. He thought that he looked almost grown up. The Milliers had emptied out a small storage room in the back of their apartment, and now that room belonged to Hugo. The French Film Academy, though, through the intervention of René Tabard, arranged for money to be given to the Millier family, and some of that money went into furnishing Hugo's room. That word furnishing sounds kind of like the word furniture, doesn't it? And so what you can think about is that furnishings mean to put furniture into something. There was a small workbench at one end, and it was covered in little mechanical creatures made out of clockworks and magic tricks of all shapes and sizes, which Hugo had made himself. The school year had begun again, and Hugo had a desk for doing homework. His shelves were covered in books, and he had many souvenirs from the Paris World's Fair, which he and Isabel had attended a month earlier. His father's notebook was safe inside a box in his bedside table. His floor was littered with drawings. He had a little drawer just for the ticket stubs of the movies he and Isabel saw together. In the darkness of a new cinema that opened in a nearby neighborhood, Hugo was able to travel backward through time and see dinosaurs and pirates and cowboys, and he saw the future with robots and cities so gigantic they blocked out the sun. He flew in airplanes and crossed the ocean in ships. In the dark of the movie theater, he first saw jungles, oceans, and deserts. He wanted to visit them all in real life. In one corner of the room stood the automaton which Hugo and Papa George had repaired to perfection. Hugo stuffed his pockets with little magic tricks and cards as he usually did, checked his railroad watch, and knocked on Isabel's door. She opened the door wearing a white dress that seemed to glow. In the living room, George Millier had on a tuxedo with his black celestial cape, which had been lovingly mended and cleaned by his wife and was now as bright and colorful as the day it was made. And she wore a dress that sparkled like water. Etienne soon arrived wearing a beautiful black tuxedo and a brand new eye patch. Hugo picked up the invitation that lay on the table. The French Film Academy invites you to join us for an evening celebrating the life and work of cinema legend George Millier. 2 gleaming motor cars pulled up to the front doors of their apartment building, and everyone headed inside. "Oh, my camera," said Isabel. "I almost forgot." She raced back to her room and got the black and silver camera her godparents had given her for her birthday. "Will you carry some extra film for me tonight?" she asked Hugo as she handed him the rolls, which he stuffed into his pocket. Now, you know, most of the pictures that we take and your grown-ups take today are taken on cell phones or digital cameras, and they don't require film. But just like when we started this book, we talked about movies used to be recorded on film, and so they had these long reels of tape that wound around a movie spool, and they showed the thousands and thousands of still pictures very quickly, so it made it look like the people and the things of the movies were moving. Photographs were taken that way too. Before we have the cameras that we have today, each picture that somebody took on a camera was captured on a piece of this film, and as the shutter or the opening on the camera let some light in, that's what made the picture on the film. And so Isabel obviously is starting to do some pictures of her own in this book. See if I can find my way back to my spot. "Will you carry some extra film for me tonight?" she asked Hugo as she handed him the rolls, which he stuffed into his pocket. "And I've been meaning to give this to you." And then she handed Hugo a photo she'd taken of him with his old friends, Antoine and Louis. They all had their arms around each other's necks, and they were laughing. "Thanks," said Hugo. He smiled and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Isabel adjusted the camera and the key on its chain around her neck so they hung properly. Outside, the drivers helped them into the cars, and off they sped to the Film Academy. "It's been a very long time since I've been here," said the old man as they neared their destination. "Maybe I'll ask to see the pictures of Prometheus I painted when I was young." "You painted that picture of Papa George?" said Hugo, amazed. "I thought it was of Prometheus. I saw it in the library." "Is it still hanging? That's good news. You know the myth then." The children told him they did. You know, then, that Prometheus was rescued in the end. His chains were broken and he was finally set free. The old man squinted one of his eyes and added, "How about that?" I wonder why he squinted his eye. Do you think he knew something and was thinking they might know it too? Once everyone was seated in the theater, Monsieur Tabard went to the podium. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he said. "My name is René Tabard, and I will be your host for this evening. We've gathered here tonight to honor one of our pioneers, Georges Méliès, who brought magic to the movies. For years, his films were believed to be lost. Indeed, Monsieur Méliès himself was believed to be gone. But we have the most wonderful surprise for the world. Monsieur Méliès is here tonight, and not all of his films were destroyed. Thanks to the diligence of one of the students here, Etienne Pichon, and with the help of weekends from Hugo and Isabelle, the two brave children who are being raised by Monsieur and Madame Méliès, we went back and checked one last time, starting with one film that we found in our own basement. Etienne, Hugo, and Isabelle searched through vaults and long-closed archives. They took trips to private collections and such strange places as barns and catacombs where their work was richly rewarded. They found old negatives, boxes of prints, and trunks full of decaying film, which we were able to save. We now have in our possession over 80 films by Monsieur Méliès, a small fraction of the 500 he produced, but I'm confident that in the years to come, even more of his movies will resurface. Tonight, Georges Méliès, my boyhood hero, is being rediscovered. Now sit back, open your eyes, and be prepared to dream. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the world of Georges Méliès. The audience cheered and applauded. The lights went down and the orchestra began to play, because remember, we said movies at that time didn't have sound that went along with them, and so often live music would be played in the cinema or the theater that they were at. The lights went down and the orchestra began to play as the curtains opened. Film by film, George's world was projected on screen for the first time in over a decade. Okay, so here are some pictures of actual still photos from the movies that the real life Georges Méliès made. Let's see if I can, there we go. And then the last film shown was A Trip to the Moon. Hugo looked at Isabelle. Tears were running down her cheeks in two thin, glimmering lines. The lights came up, and the man of honor was then invited up on stage, where he was given a gold laurel wreath to wear as a crown. He stepped to the podium and said to the audience in a proud, emotion-filled voice, "As I look out at all of you gathered here, I want to say that I don't see a room full of Parisians in top hats and diamonds and silk dresses. I don't see bankers and housewives and store clerks. No, I address you all tonight as you truly are, wizards, mermaids, travelers, adventurers, and magicians. You are the true dreamers." After the gala ended, they all went to a small party in his honor at a nearby restaurant. Hugo and Isabelle took photographs the entire night, and Hugo sat at a table doing magic tricks. A rather sizable crowd soon gathered around Hugo. Georges Méliès walked over to where Hugo was sitting, put his hand on Hugo's shoulder, and said to everyone, "I want you all to remember this moment. I believe this is the first public performance ever given by Professor Alcofrisbis." I don't know if any of you remember all the way back to when we began this book, but there was a page at the very beginning of this book written by somebody named Professor Alcofrisbis, and at that time we didn't know who it was. So maybe when we finish the couple of chapters, we'll go back and read that. Hugo looked up and asked, "Who is Professor Alcofrisbis?" "Why, you are, my boy. Professor Alcofrisbis was my character, who appeared in many of my films, sometimes as an explorer, sometimes as an alchemist, a person who can turn anything into gold. But mostly, he was a magician, and now he has appeared in real life, right here, in this very room." At that moment, the machinery of the world finally lined up. Somewhere a clock struck midnight, and Hugo's future seemed to fall perfectly into place. Chapter 12, Winding It Up. Time can play all sorts of tricks on you. In the blink of an eye, babies appear in carriages, coffins disappear into the ground. Wars are won and lost, and children transform like butterflies into adults. That's what happened to me. Once upon a time, I was a boy named Hugo Cabret, and I desperately believed that a broken automaton would save my life. Now that my cocoon has fallen away, and I've emerged as a magician named Professor Alcafrisbis. So who is he now? I can look back and see that I was right. The automaton my father discovered did save me. But now I've built a new automaton. I spent countless hours designing it. I made every gear myself, carefully cut every brass disc, and fashioned every last bit of machinery with my own hands. When you wind it up, it can do something I'm sure no other automaton in the world can do. It can tell you the incredible story of George Méliès, his wife, their goddaughter, and a beloved clockmaker whose son grew up to be a magician. The complicated machinery inside my automaton can produce 158 different pictures. 158 different pictures, and it can write letter by letter an entire book, 26,159 words. These words. That's it. We did it. We finished the whole book. Wasn't it wonderful? I'm so excited that I got to share that very, very special book with all of you. It is always my favorite. I, of course, am disappointed that I didn't get to see your faces as we read the ending, but I'm glad that we did it together. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your night. I will make another video of something to read to you soon or teach to you soon. And in the meanwhile, keep working hard on your packets at home. Be good to the people around you. Remember to take those breaths when you need them. Find your super spot. Take the big breaths out. And be kind. See you soon.